Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. I am your host, Dr. Owen Campbell, owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona. And with me, as always, is Dr. Brian Wolf, owner of Evolution PT and Fitness in Connecticut and Long Island. How are we doing today, Brian?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about our next topic because,
I know.
again, it's another thing that you've done over and over again, and I'm just learning about, right? And it's something that's seems simple, but then when you actually get in and try and do it, a lot harder than you at least think it might be. So what we're going to talk about today is setting up, I always like to call it just setting up your online presence, right? And not so much online like having a beautiful website only. I mean more like how to get technology to work for you in a lot of different arenas when you're first starting. So, as we talked about a little bit in previous podcasts, you could always spend a bunch of money and have somebody do all of this for you. But a lot of our listeners are just starting out, right? Or they haven't made that first million. So they're really trying to still cut corners and figure out ways that they can do it. So I thought it was a really good idea that we put together kind of like a little bit of a top 4 or 5 things that we would do if we were just to start, right? And I can go through some of the stuff that I'm dealing with right now, and we can hopefully kind of come to a little bit of a conclusion on some of these things on how to save money while
Yeah,
also getting pretty good results.
I love it. Let's do it. It's funny, and complete transparency. I literally was like going through our school stuff we put together and like where would we start and how we're organizing it. And I was like, oh, this is like one of the things that you need to do. Where to put people, right? Like this is the idea behind it.
Yeah. Good. So the first thing that I did, I got my LLC, I got all the sort of legal stuff together. And the first thing I did is I got a WordPress account, cheapest one they had, and I just put up a site, put up a website so that if I told somebody and they told somebody that I would look somewhat legitimate, right? And as you well know, I am not great with the technology side, and I'm learning, but you start getting business, people start looking at it, and then you start losing people because your website kind of looks like it was just slapped together, right? So I think the first thing that you really want to hone in on and figure out what you want to do is your web page and then also your Google profile, right? So if people want to write reviews. And I mean, I know I did it my way, and I think just because I don't know what I'm doing, it turned out not to be the most efficient thing, but honestly, I got feedback. It was a pretty good looking site. So, I mean, what would you, in terms of like, if I said, man, you know, I have 3 patients who've paid me money, so I have, 450, right?
Yeah.
So I could pay for this $100 a year membership, and then what else? Like, where should I go from there? I got a site that says my name on it with my picture. Now what?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I would tell anybody is to go like that's the nice thing about like Wix. I think it's like $300 for the year. Like, there's a lot of places where essentially what you can do is you can create a web page where essentially what ends up happening is people just go to find you, right? And I remember the first time I created a web page, I did the same thing. And I am not that creative. So like for me to put like a web page up there, it sucked. I remember it like not being particularly good.
Hmm.
And so, to have something that's a clean image that looks good, then somebody can go up and like, again, see who you are, read who you are. The reality of what happens here is I also think I wouldn't lose too much sleep on the website because the reality of it is most people only click through like I think it's like 1 to 1.7 pages on someone's actual website. So the reality is to have a really good landing page is really important because if I've got somewhere like one page that's connected to all of my advertising and all of those things, and I'm going to collect leads through there, that person's probably going to go straight to that. And the faster I can get into that, the way I've heard it described is like think about especially with advertising, think about the crescendo of the advertising. Like if you're in that person's shoes, like if I've clicked on an ad, like say I find an ad and I'm like, oh, I'm interested in that. I might be poking around for like 3 clicks at the most. And then I might be like how many times have you gotten through a shopping cart and be like, nah, maybe I'm really not that interested. Like
Yep.
you really want to catch somebody quickly where like you're like, all right, let's do this. And then you jump in, right? Most people aren't like first time they see it, boom, done, boom, right? And I would also argue that the more expensive your product, in this case, we're talking a lot about physical therapy and obviously like cash-based stuff. Like this is why I think insurance works really like insurance helps because as soon as they see we take insurance, oh, perfect, bang, boom, boom, and then they just now the person's a little motivated because they're not paying as much money. Whereas in the cash space, like you got to be prepared because like they might not buy the first time. You know what I mean? Depending on
Yeah.
the product. So just I think being super efficient is the key, right? And
Mhm.
so realize that it makes more of a it makes more sense to me to spend more money and time on one really good landing page. Um, and there's lots of services that are doing it. However, that being said, those services also know what they have to offer, and so therefore they will charge you as well pretty accordingly. So
Yeah.
somewhere between 300 and 1,000 bucks is probably what you're looking at as an initial investment.
Yeah, and I kind of shot the gap in between with that, right? I started with my web page, that landing page, that this is what I'm doing, and had some keywords, so if people searched my name, they would find it, right? And then now I'm at 8 months in, and I've actually just started hiring somebody. He has like a nice kind of budget option that also gives me a little bit of SEO and all that, because I know going forward I will need some level of SEO presence to build even more of an SEO presence. It makes it easier to do. Um, but I don't need that. I just think that my vision is to grow. My vision is to hire multiple employees, get bigger, all that, and you will need that to start out with. But if you're just looking to just keep getting your patients, just a landing page, like you said, 1.5 clicks, right? Um, it just has to be very informative on the cash side, or for the insurance side, mostly it just has to have the sort of we take this and then go. I think also too the Google profile is really important. I just had a friend who's a air conditioning tech, and he's been in business. He's been in a BNI group. He's been doing all this stuff for years, doesn't have a Google profile. It's free, right? He doesn't set it up. I was like, "Hey, where can I leave you a review? You did a great work." And he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I mean, I'll eventually get a website." And I was like, "No, no, no, man, like go put some pictures on there, that'll help too when it comes to just like again basic searching. When somebody says, oh, this guy Owen has a company, is you got to have that business profile on there if you don't have it already.
It's a really good point. Like if you don't have, a website, right, in general, then what ends up happening is when people go to find you, they can't find you, right? And so, to optimize any type of Google SEO, you need to have some sort of website for that, right? So it makes sense. And a lot of it is a lot of what we're talking about here in general is when we think about advertising, we think about other things that accumulate. We're talking about where basically to send your leads, right? And so there are certain ways to do it that essentially engage your leads. A website, if it has plenty of buttons like request an appointment here, or do this, or do right, like those are really engaging. And so because of that, then the person can actually like we get at least 3 to 5 requesting appointments, per day through our website, right? And that's just in Connecticut and in New York. I'd be interested to see how much traffic through the rest of the country. And so the reality is like when you're showing up on Google, you're showing up other places like that obviously matters, man. Like that you get a lot going on that way, right? So to think about where you're going to send people, like the idea behind content driven and organic um advertising is going to be to put that advertising out there to drive people towards your website where people then can then sign up with you. So essentially, what we're talking about is any types of links that people can give you their information because they're then raising their hand saying, "Hey, I have back pain or neck pain or I have X, Y, and Z, and I need help." And so that's what this essentially is doing, right? So, to your point about a Google profile, that's so important so that people can actually leave you legitimate claims, and
Mhm.
people read that stuff, man. Like that's the thing; it's important.
Well, and that's it. And I think that first box is legitimize yourself. Make it so that somebody looks at you and says they're a real company, right? The
Yes.
second thing I want to talk about is now that they know that you're a real company, how do you close that person, right? So, oh, I have a friend, she's got back pain, she would love to work with you and all this stuff. And, oh, how many times have you heard that, right? And crickets, no one calls ever, right? So, the get it, turning that legitimacy as a company into actual leads and actual bringing people in, I think is probably the next best thing I would really want to start looking into as I'm starting to set up any sort of technological presence, all the way down to just starting the company, right? You have to figure out a way of getting those people through your door into actually cash in hand patients. So, one thing that we're going to talk about, I think you wanted to touch on, is setting up a calendar. And we talked about a little
Hmm.
bit in the last episode about how this can kind of lead you very seamlessly into a face to face conversation via Zoom, if you set it up through your website. And then also, I think just making sure that we're taking care of people once they've come in, right? We're asking for Google reviews, we're giving them appointment reminders, we're making sure that they can seamlessly schedule on our calendar. All of those, like nurturing the person as they've made contact with you, I think is probably the second step that I would take.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think so. There's kind of two pieces to what you just said, right? So to go into the calendars or CRM, I think what you're setting the person up for next is the sales process. Okay,
Mhm.
so this could be done via a calendar as basic as Google Calendars. I think that's what I used when I first started, right? And then would hop on
Me
phone
too.
calls with people, right? Yeah, and would hop on phone calls with people. That works. The other thing is virtual, just like this. Like we're talking virtually, and you could do something along those lines, or in person, right? So all three work. All three work. That being said, I always quote the movie We Are Marshall, right? Where there's a point where he's fighting back to get their rights to have a football season after what happened in that movie. Spoiler alerts, right? And so what he does is there's a line where Matthew McConaughey, right, turns to who's the athletic director. I don't know the actor, but he was getting denied the access and the ability to actually you know reinstate their football season. He goes, I bet you didn't ask, and he was calling them and and that kind of stuff. And he goes, I bet you didn't ask your wife to marry you through the phone, right? And it's like, exactly, like realize that the personal aspect of, if I'm going to ask for more money, the more money I'm going to ask for, the more intimate I want it to be. So you want it to be face to face, either virtual. That's what's beautiful about what COVID did, was it did make this very normal. So to do something face to face where we're not in the same room together has a much more personal feel than, say, if you're on the phone, right? And same thing if I'm in the room with somebody, right? Like in theory, if I'm on a sales call with somebody right now and I'm asking for $10,000, and not, I'm making up a number right now, but I'm asking for $10,000, right? In theory, if Owen's the person I'm trying to sell this to, he could just delete the chat right now and the sales meeting's over. I lose control. Versus if you're in the room with me, it's a lot harder to get up and walk out. I've had it happen. I've had it happen where someone literally just started standing up and turning around and leaving, and I was like, I guess this meeting's over, huh? So that does happen. However, I think when it comes to what's important to understand is, from the calendar perspective, it's like, okay, if I'm going to set up a calendar for you, we're going to set up a time to talk, we're going to set up a time to meet in person, or we're going to set up a time to meet virtually. And so there's stuff like Calendly, and then I guess the next step is then, and like Google Calendar will do this feature where you have Google Meet that links in. That's really great. Um, but then there's also CRM systems like Go High Level and other CRM systems that are out there that you can sign up for that will do this as well. That will create it
And
for you.
And I think it's important to look at the two ways a calendar can help you. A calendar that is put in the patient's hands can help you. Like we talked about on this podcast and previous podcasts, about it being a way of getting you in front of a patient, right? Because they can schedule a discovery call. But it also allows them to pick their appointment time, and it allows you to send automated reminders a day before, which has been shown to increase show rates, or reschedule rates, right? As opposed to just a no show. So I think the calendar can be really good. And then, just as a clarification for anybody listening to this who doesn't know, CRM is customer relationship management. So that
Yep.
is where you already know somebody's interested in your services. How do you keep them? How do you make them from a skeptical customer to like a raving fan? So when Brian talks about these CRM services, it's things like, asking for Google reviews and asking, kind of reputation management stuff. All of these ways of making it so that it's seamless for them to interact with you.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of time, like school is a CRM that we use to engage
Mhm.
with customers of people that want mentorship from us, right? So
Yeah.
there's a way from essentially creating, there's lots of other ways to do it. It depends on what you need it and what you would like it to do, right? MailChimp is another example that's been, Aweber is one. Like I said, Go High Level. There's tons and tons and tons of these things out in the space. It's really about what you want it to be. I can tell you that I actually have multiple. I probably have, honestly, almost a dizzying amount of CRMs, right? Like we have, because we have three for our fitness space, and that's not including like Facebook groups. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, right? And then we have at least one, if not two. Yeah, we have two, three for our PT. So like from that perspective, I'm juggling six of these bad boys, right? And that none of them involve school. So I guess between you and I got seven, right? So it's just the thing though about that's so great about this is technology can ramp up. So going back to your original question, where do you start? Because like, yeah, I guess as I'm calculating in my head, I also understand what we pay for all these things. So like again, like if you're paying 150
That was going to
bucks
be
a
my
month,
next point. Yeah.
yeah. So at 150 bucks a month, that's seven of these. You're talking about $1,000 reoccurring. You're talking about $12,000 a year, like to $15,000 a year on CRMs. But Brian, why would you spend that much money? Well, if you have enough customers that you're engaging and you're engaging them all the time in different ways that are more automated. And quite frankly, to Owen's point, I want employees. So I have employees engaging my customers on these platforms. I want to make it as easy for my employees to engage my customers and as easy for my customers to engage them back. And so
Yeah.
that increases retention. So these are the determinations you got to make as you build your business.
CRM is honestly just a try hard made into technology. So like how like a
Call
kid
it
on a
prayer.
team, yeah, a kid on a team who doesn't have any skill, but like definitely like he's always in the weight room and he gets on the field just because like he tries hard, right? You can do a lot of that yourself. You can constantly be texting people about your appointments. You can constantly be doing all that. As you level up, either more patients or you're able to save some money to put into these things. You can invest that money to make it happen at a faster level, right? And that's the try hard becomes the talent, right? So when you're talking about CRM, it can definitely be bootstrapped, but trust me when I tell you, it is very frustrating once you get busy to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
So it will eventually migrate into it, but if you're just starting out, dude, we all did it. We all have been, texting people appointment reminders. Are you going to be here tomorrow? Like all that stuff. I'm able to now kind of move that off a little bit. But I mean, not to any great shakes, not to the point that, we're talking about Mr. Evolution, physical therapy over
Well,
here.
I think what's interesting is as I'm looking at it, man, like I have one CRM that I know I pay like 150 bucks a month. Um, but literally it's just to send emails out to people. But I know that it's helped me get people to the door, and I like the ease of how much easier it is for me to get the emails out. I don't need to use that. I could use another CRM that we currently have, but I just don't like it as much. And so, like, to your point, if you're just starting out, you don't need that. And by the way, the good news is I would say like that when I first started with that CRM, it was only 10 bucks a month. But now I have an email list of over 15,000 people. So guess what? Now it's 150 bucks. So
Mhm.
like the reality is like when you're engaging those people, it's a little bit less. Now, something like Kajabi where you can develop the website and there's kind of an old adage, right? Like every like one company can really do one thing well. Like Kajabi was designed as not so much a CRM, but like as a website company. But you get the website, you get landing pages, CRM in that way because they do email as well. So you upload lists. Like it does do a lot of that stuff. So Kajabi is a good one. But literally, man, I just typed into Google like CRM with landing pages, and like here's one, two, three, four. Like there must be freaking 50 of these things on here. And I'm not and I'm not even on the like it's craziness. So stuff there's all sorts of different ways you can do this, and you can start pretty inexpensive and get used to one. Realize that the whole point of why it's less expensive when you are just starting out to why it's more expensive is, for me to migrate 15 thousand email addresses. I have a bunch of emails on there, like a bunch of emails that I've written and that get saved on there. Like the moving process is a bigger pain in the neck. And these companies know this. So what they do is they're like, all right, we'll start low. And as you grow, we'll charge you more money. So there's a couple of ways to do it. You can start low and then build high, which is what I would suggest to most people. Or you can just go all in on one and be like, I know this one works. Like say you've worked for say you're like someone like Owen who's worked for a bigger company and you've like, oh my God, I love this CRM system. It does all this stuff for me. And then Owen's like, I'm going off on my own and I'm doing my own thing. Like, now what do I do? I'd be like, well, if you like know that one backwards and forwards and it's good for you, like wow, just use that one. Spend the extra money because it's going to be one of those things where you're going to know it so well that it makes sense. So I guess that's how I would determine the cost in that way.
Yeah. And it's very personal. You got to know yourself. Am I someone who is very good at making the trains run on time? Well, maybe you don't need a CRM for a long time. Um, but if you're someone like me, where it's more like ideas, marketing, and I can't keep stuff straight by myself, I was one of the first things I really want to push money into. So the next thing then is that we talk about we have the calendar. You can get face to face in front of people for relative. I mean, Google Calendar's free. Calendly is another one, and you have this, but how do you get more people to understand you're there, right? So we've talked a lot about paid ads, right? That's basically buying eyeballs that you can't go out. You don't have enough time to go and get in front of. But then those eyeballs see you, and then you got to be able to get them to your site. So then I think after we figured out a web page and a Google profile, after we figured out, okay, of the existing customers of my friends, family, network, all that stuff that they can get taken care of, having like a bookable calendar and a CRM system. Now, how do we get people who've never met me before to want to be interested in me, right? And that's kind of that next phase of growing as you're kind of worked out all of your networking, uh, networking your personal network, getting those paid ads and getting people to actually like click on your stuff, right? So I think one of the things you talked to me about in earlier conversations is less is more, right? So when you said that in reference of, here's simplified motion physical therapy, we do really good with golf, uh click this now. So they click it in Facebook, and then I send them to a website. Well, I wanted to tell them all about myself. Right. And you're just like, they are going to click away so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of expand on that. Like, tell me what your point behind that
So
is.
so I think the thought process, like there's a part that where like that person was following you, right? And so I think like that stuff is really good to like want to put more, like I think blog posts and those things are really helpful for SEO, right? Like those are really good for SEO. I think when it comes to the importance around how to essentially like get paid ads towards people, you don't need like on an image. I think this recipe's worked really well for me. Image that is eye catching, right? Like attractive male or female is a really good one, right? Like, no offense to other people, but attractiveness does catch eyeballs, right? Like if I know Owen, if I put a very attractive woman, he's going to slow down a hair, right? Like like a picture. And I love his wife to death. I know she would say the same exact thing, right, Owen? Like, right? So like again, like attractive men and women matter, right? But like doing a picture of somebody doing something, that's calling to your audience. So in the case of Owen, like a golfer, an attractive golfer hitting a golf ball, and very small at like small like copy being like simplify motion, we help golfers hit the ball further. And then think psychology. You could even have like attractive male golfer friends being like, "Whoa, look at that!" Like something like that. You know what I mean? Like you could do something along those lines. Short videos help, but again, they're like we have like 5 second attention span. So I'm finding images work better, and then really strong copy. So if you can come up with a really good ad copy that's in the caption that describes your program, the importance, because what's going to happen is that picture is going to catch someone's eyeball and they're going to be like, I kind of want to look. You want to like not write the whole caption on your thing, right? For your paid advertising, because in theory, if they go to your copy and they read your copy and they're like, huh, I'm interested in this, then they'll click on something. And that's where then like, all right, we're going to click on the link. I want to learn more. So like, let me go and let me schedule a time to meet with this person and give my information. And so I have found a lot more people, what will end up happening is they won't actually book off that. They'll give you their information to contact them.
And
And
then
that
that's where the
and that's
calendar
where
and all
yes,
that
and
stuff
that's
comes
where
in.
the CRM, that's where like like the Mailchimps and like the Awebers and like those things, like the Go High levels can be really really helpful, because what they do is then you are going after those people and following up with them like crazy. And that's
Mhm.
important because that's the fortunes of the follow up. If you the more you follow up with people, the more you get them invested in what you're doing, like the better.
Yeah. And I think again, this is all based on scale, right? So with me, I'll go to Canva on my free subscription, or I think I pay like $5 a month or something.
Yeah.
I'll make something. Will have those very basic psychological things. I will chat GPT a caption, or I'll write it myself, and then I have a very basic landing page, and then I'm the one that calls them because I might only get I might only spend $10 a day on my ads because that's all that's all I
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
right? And then you can scale it all the way up to what you're doing, where you're spending a few thousand a month on ads, and you need all these different processes to be able to kind of handle that volume and make every customer get a touch point, right? So I think that from someone who's early, there's a way to get a lot of that same mojo for a lot less money,
Yeah.
right? Um, and again, it's once the whole goal is getting more people, right? So if you get more people, then you have the money to spend on these other, this technology that'll help you manage that and keep up.
Yeah, the one, and again, come circling back to the CRM, and the one thing that I would say, again with paid advertising, is I've had a ton of success with Go High Level, and we are not sponsored by Go High Level at all. Maybe Go High Level will contact us, that'd be great.
There you go.
But they're the ones that like you can do the most with, and they're just under $300 a month. So again,
Mm.
like to your point, it's all right. So $3,600 develops your landing pages, does call tracking. You can text and you can mark those. Now I know you got to do stuff with like Twilio and other things like that. So it's not the actual CRM, and now you have CRMs that feed into the CRMs, right? So
Mm.
it's like it is expensive in certain ways, but there's aspects to this that you can even build a website
But
from this thing, right?
But it
So
max but it maximizes its scale. Like the
yes,
whole thing is you got to just do that cost
so
for that cost or customer acquisition math that we did way back in the early stages of the
yes,
podcast, where it's like if I put $1,000 in and I get 3,000 because of it, it's worth it,
yes,
right?
there's the machine.
So yeah, and I mean if you keep that at the front of your head, me as a small business, I can do that. I can say, oh, I spent $50 and I got one person. Amazing, right? Like
Yes,
then I won't run away from something that's working, right?
yeah,
All the way up to you, where you will have spreadsheets and outlays and all this other stuff and accountants and everybody telling you. And then you can say, oh, yeah, obviously that makes sense. So I think mentality wise, you can save costs just by knowing the right stuff to throw money into and having that sort of customer acquisition math in your head. And then knowing that, like, you can get a lot out of just trying hard and kind of knowing the major principles of what these bigger scalable CRM units, calendars, companies, what they do for advertising, all that, knowing the basic principles that someone like you, Brian, who's literally spending that money, you're doing the same. You're talking about those principles right now. So if I could just take those and just put it on a smaller scale, I'll be fine.
yeah, 100%. And like I almost would tell you, Owen, like for anybody, like I would find something where, all right, like I just need a landing page and a way to like if you were just to say, hey, I want a landing page and a way to get like to bring on money and like take money
Mm,
in payments, right? That's probably gonna be $99 per month. All right, so say it's $99 per month. Then maybe the next jump is to something like Go High Level, where it's like $300
mm.
a month. And so
Yep.
like that's how you can kind of mitigate that. And I think that's a good way to build your confidence. To like that's what we talked about. Like I wish I had the more confidence to do this. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of that aspect of it. So I think there's a really cool way to build that. And that's why I like stuff like, even like the Kajabis that are like, $99 a month. It's like, all right, that's not that big of a deal because ultimately we can use that kind of stuff, right?
And Brian, do you know a great way to build your confidence when you don't have any or you don't have the experience
Oh,
to?
what a segue.
Oh,
What a segue that
it is
was.
the Physio Growth School group, the mentorship group we have going. So if you guys do or don't know, we got some logos changes on our Facebook page, and it's also on our group where it's now the Physio Growth Mentorship Group. You will have full access to Brian and I. Like I said, you'll have someone like Brian who's done this at scale. He's gone from where I'm at to where he's at, and then you'll also have access to me on someone who's done more on the scaling side. So being able to build people, grow people, get it so that you have a bigger operation. This group is free right now. So the link is going to be in the show notes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get this. Tell your friends. It's a lot of information up there. We are putting stuff in there all the time. And right now, it's actually free to access because we are working on trying to figure out how to make sure that it's monetized so that people who are in the group will be the only ones to have access to it. So if you want a free sneak peek, check it out because I think Brian just posted like half an hour's worth of stuff.
Yeah, I did. I did. And I think a lot of this is like we're moving towards like a paid model that we know will work, but we want feedback on it. So obviously if you're one of our earlier listeners that's listening to this stuff and you want to jump in it for free, now's the time. But if you listen to this 6 months from now, it's definitely gonna be paid for. So if you're 6 months late to this podcast, But again,
Yeah.
you could either pay for mentorship or you can pay in time. And this will accelerate.
Well,
My confidence level in this is you will get 5 clients minimum. And again, with five clients in 6 weeks, I guarantee it, or 8 weeks, something along those lines. It's going to be
yeah.
and then it's a machine that you can recreate for the rest of your career. So
Uh,
if you want to learn those types of skill sets and how to make money, we're teaching people how to do this.
Yeah, and let's be honest, you honestly usually don't have access to people with this experience, right?
Yeah.
We have 28 years combined experience. We've managed over $7 million in yearly revenue between the two of us. It's not some guy who had the best cash practice in a state 10 years ago when no one else was doing it. So, look it up. It will eventually be priced
I,
appropriately.
I hope I
All
hope
right.
Owen's not mad at me saying this, but we've been doing this now, and Owen in a year of doing this has hit 6 figures, right, Owen? Of doing this,
Yeah, I'm getting close. I
yeah.
am
So I
getting
mean,
close. I am
and
not
and
too
and
far
in,
away.
in his first year, I mean, that's pretty cool. So I mean, again, if that's something that you're interested in doing, we're doing this kind of stuff and teach people how to do it.
Yep. All
So
right. Well, with that, we are out, my friend.
cool, man. See
All
ya.
right. See you.